Today we're joined by Evgeny Aleksandrov. Thanks for joining us, Evgeny. Please could you give us a quick introduction to yourself and your background, as well as PilotBird?
Thanks, Jake. My name is Evgeny Aleksandrov. I'm founder and CEO of PilotBird. Uh, PilotBird specializes on analyzing open source intelligence to improve claims payout accuracy and evaluate claims with publicly available data. My background prior to founding PilotBird is quite diverse, mostly in financial services. I started my career as a software engineer at a large global bank, designing market risk analytics platform. I transitioned to be an investment banker for financial institutions as well as an equity research analyst. And I also had a stint as a management consultant. So as a founder, I have a multifaceted skill set. I'm very much excited to contribute to insurance industry through innovation and data analytics.
Thank you. Yeah, so a wealth of experience in your background, then a very diverse, skill set you've derived from that. Does that position you uniquely to approach some of the challenges of insurance, would you say?
Well, I always served larger clients and enterprises. So working with insurance carriers is a natural, um, extension of what I've done prior to entrepreneurship. However, I would say serving insurance carriers specifically, it creates somewhat of a unique environment, especially as a solution provider that is also different from what I've done before. So as a investment banker or as equity research analyst, I tended to look outside in perspective. Whereas as a management consultant as well as software engineer, I have built businesses inside out, and so having those two perspectives is very helpful as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. Having a view from either side of the fence can really help contextualize some of the challenges that need to be solved by carriers. I'd like to talk a little bit about the current challenges faced by insurers when it comes to claims evaluation. The most obvious challenges appear to be data accuracy, and the speed at which claims handlers are able to access reliable data. Is this actually the case, or are there more pressing challenges perhaps hiding behind the scenes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that data and technology is just one aspect of the challenges that insurers face. Claims function existed ever since the insurance existed, maybe even before that. It's a basic purpose of why insurance company exists. So the challenges that insurance carrier would face in serving their customers is actually quite broad. But in terms of claims units specifically, I would say that data and technology is less of a challenge. It's actually a solution to serve customer better, faster, cheaper. The challenges that insurance carriers face on the claim department tends to be more around, staffing, more around resources, more around quality of service, customer satisfaction, reliability. One aspect that we come across very frequently, something that many insurance carriers accept as a cost of doing business, but oftentimes surprise themselves how big that cost of doing business is within fraud space. Fraud mitigation, misrepresentations by, one of those handful of bad apples that make insurance more expensive for everybody else. So in the US, it's about $310 billion problem, not including the emerging threats from technology and AI. So just to answer your question, there's multifaceted problems that insurance carriers face on the claim side. Cost of doing business with fraud and mitigation and payout accuracy is less known one, but just as massive.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a real, broad opportunity to improve service and drive differentiation through data and speed of delivery, as you say. Then, so in the current market, there's an enormous amount of data available. However, selecting and implementing the correct data, let's say, into decision processes is much easier said than done, especially in a scalable way. So how does lifestyle analytics help a claims team move towards instantly understanding a claimant's reality without relying on solely manual, self-reported information?
Yeah, absolutely. We live in a world where you need to trust and but verify, and oftentimes insurance carriers tend to rely on the data that is submitted by the claimant, and it tends to be somewhat curated information to support the claim and maybe not a holistic data set, I would say, about either the claimant, the situation, or the third party involved. So, what PilotBird provides is accurate, real time lifestyle data on the claimant and the situation where the claim took place, the loss environment where that claim covers. You're absolutely right. Being able to provide the data that is relevant, accurate, at scalable way is the challenge for the industry. I think even for the data that insurance carriers already have in-house, that data oftentimes is stale, patchy, unreliable, and oftentimes mislabeled. So being able to bring external data is both a challenge because you need to make sure that that data is at least a higher standard than the insurance carriers will have internally, but more importantly, done in a way that adds value to the process and both in terms of the speed of the payout as well as the accuracy of the payout. So when we look at PilotBird of serving our insurance carriers with lifestyle data, we really look to number one, minimize false positives. That is at the heart of where we spend our resources to make sure that the accuracy of the deliverable is to the point. We would rather not present inaccurate data rather than, for the data's sake. We would rather focus very much on fewer data points that do move the needle and that are accurate. And then being able to scale, it's really, frankly, goes from case at a time where we build trust and reliability with one line of business or even sometimes one regional team and expand from there.
Yeah, thank you. Interesting. Data quality is paramount importance and not to be compromised, I guess, to quantity is part of what you're saying. And I liked what you mentioned about the data submitted for claims is often curated. I think anyone that's made a claim for whatever reason before might feel the pressure of how should I answer this question in order to kind of receive a payout on my claim. And that doesn't help insurers because they need the kind of objective, correct information on the situation that's occurred. So yeah, very interesting. Thank you.
Just to build on that, we spend time at Pablo looking at open source data, and there's a lot of bad actors there. And sometimes these bad actors actually publicly share how to misguide an insurance carrier. They would name a carrier and they would tell how to fill out a form and what to say and what not to say to exaggerate losses and to avoid any safety checks that this insurance carrier would have for that specific line of business, for that specific carrier name. So insurance carriers oftentimes recognize that one claimant at a time may be misrepresenting, but what they oftentimes forget to recognize is that there's actually organized way and structured way even individuals, but also groups of bad actors can attack a carrier and drain the capital. So something that carriers in the know who investing into the space, who work with PilotBird, are acutely aware and actually been seeing great results.
Very interesting. It sounds like that has a real potential to scale the challenges that we've already discussed when it comes to potentially outdated data, potential misrepresentation. That's kind of a real snowballing effect on that if you have actors operationalizing how to mislead or misrepresent. So yeah, a real minefield. And I guess on that note, we do often see a conflict between the stated truth and real-time data. So in lines like workers' comp or disability, how does leveraging open source social data help reconcile these two realities to ensure that any given claim is legitimate?
Both workers' comp and disability policies are very much casualty claims related to a human body, right? Usually. And what's interesting about casualty claims specifically is that the condition of the person or the injury evolves over time. It's not like a property side where there is a one-time damage or loss and it stays that way. With a human body, that tends to evolve. New data presents itself, new lifestyle signals would become more relevant over course of a claim, right? So having lifestyle signals not just at the FNOL or at the time of the reporting, but over the entire life of a claim, that makes a world of a difference to provide proper risk assessment, uh, accuracy of the payout, and also having conversations with the claimant and the policyholder to make sure that they feel supported and they get the benefits that they deserve. So, what we've discovered with PilotBird, the losses around human injuries is an outsized amount, both in terms of the dollar paid out, but also misrepresentations. And both providing external analytics, but also insights on the data that insurance carriers already have in house. All of these signals provide a much more accurate way of what the claim should be paid as.
Yeah, I guess the compounding effect of one, how complex the human body is in that context, and two, the dynamic nature of a life. Like your habits change over time, the way you live changes over time. So you've got this incredibly complex machine that can act in ways that you're not certain of, but all the inputs and the affecting factors that affect that machine are also kind of changing over time. So it seems like quite a complex challenge to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is expensive, right? Like human life is expensive, injuries are expensive, recoveries are expensive. And, at insurance carriers, there may be recent focus on operational efficiency and streamlining processes with data and analytics and technology, which frankly improves customer experience. But in terms of ROI, return on investment, and in terms of actually impact to the bottom line for the carrier, accuracy of the payout is a magnitude more valuable than operational efficiency just to the bottom line. And that's why at PilotBird we see anywhere between 14 times to 56 times ROI when deployed at scale with PNC carriers by improving accuracy.
Yeah, that's an incredible ROI increase, and I guess it's just testament to the opportunity for improvement there is in lines such as disability and workers' comp and anything related to kind of injury or human life. I guess on the topic of benefits and what PilotBird solves for insurers, PilotBird highlights the ability to achieve a 5 times improvement in detecting ineligible claims within a 24-hour turnaround. How does this acceleration of the workflow fundamentally change the economics of a claims department? And are there any other dimensions by which PilotBird adds benefit to claims teams?
So I would say that being able to get relevant facts early in the claims lifecycle is important before the payouts even being done, right? So inform that the claim may be, misrepresented or maybe missing certain facts. Having that information early in the process in the actionable way what is where a lot of the ROI does come from, in the way that having those facts later in the claim life may be less relevant because it's so hard to claw back some of the benefits that were paid out generally, as well as the very small percentage of claim and misrepresented claim actually gets to litigation and to law enforcement. So being able to proactively identify information early on is helpful in terms of justifying ROI, but more importantly, also over a course of a claim as the injury evolves or the person may recover, being able to get information and accurately pay out on those benefits also improves returns generally. I would also highlight the human element of uh, of being able to use lifestyle analytics. Not only we identify misrepresentation, but we actually do identify cases where we validate that the claim is valid and should be paid out rapidly. And that improves overall customer satisfaction. And frankly, people feel much better about working with that insurance carrier. That's on the customer side. But the human element on the adjuster side is just as important. adjusters are oftentimes overstaffed. They trying to cover as many cases as possible. So presenting them with information that is relevant and actionable to the claim and building that trust with the adjusters and making their life easier and making their job satisfaction better is where lifestyle analytics could be very much helpful with PilotBird, where the adjusters will come and say, like, hey, I'm glad that this data is presented to me at this time at the final well or upon the review. And they feel like they cover their bases and have confidence that what they're paying out on makes sense without spending too much time on that claim.
That's a super interesting point, because talking about the value of data in insurance, we typically move to stuff like accuracy and availability, and as you mentioned, timing both before the claim and after the claim. But that human element on the adjuster side, are they enjoying their day to day? How difficult is their job? That's huge, because the talent conversation, especially when it comes to competitive differentiation at the minute, is such a factor. We've seen recently some really big kind of talent moves from carrier to carrier. And in terms of retaining your key talent that can generate value and do hero work, they've got to be happy in their job. So that's such a big, I guess, such a big impact that the data can have that does sit a little bit more behind the scenes.
And I would say that the industry is also evolving, right? It's a self-selecting industry where top talent will gravitate towards carriers where that top talent is best utilized, whether it is with technology, whether it is with culture or resources, right? And also, it tends to be a grayer industry where, the talent that we had is seasoned, which is tremendous wealth and expertise that may be retiring in the coming years. And the new fresh talent coming in, they have a whole new level of expectations for on job satisfaction and the uses of technology. It's really hard to go from using, sleek TikTok app or Amazon app to looking at black and white screen at work environment from the DOS years, right? It's just a huge disconnect. So the expectations for new adjusters of using of technology in their day-to-day work environment is much greater as well. So it's a way to attract those incoming talent and manage that transition effectively, generational transition.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge opportunity, I think, to solidify differentiation and solidify a carrier's place in the market by kind of attracting the most valuable talent through the tools and experience they receive in their jobs. So yeah, no, super interesting point. Thank you, Evgeny. So what would you say is the biggest hurdle for insurers who want to modernize their risk data infrastructure, but maybe are tentative to begin experimenting with emerging data sources like social intelligence?
I would say that generally insurance carriers in the US, and I would say some European carriers as well, even though they tend to be a little bit ahead of the curve, they struggle with validating external data effectively at the cost point. Oftentimes, it costs insurance carriers multiples of times with internal costs versus what they charge the external vendor to validate that data. So ways to optimize that process through a word of mouth or through public use cases or through associations on which that have validated the data source from that provider, or frankly, experience through your established vendor of choice like Citora, where the data sources have been already curated and vetted, lowers the cost of experiments as well as validation. So I would say that when we work with insurance carriers, they tend to hear about PilotBird from their peers and how effective it is. Some of the more emerging use cases that have not been yet adopted in industry, we work with those pioneers, building on the relationships that we already have and the trust that we already have with those individuals. Because ultimately, it's the individuals that make the decision. And that relationship and trust is hard to build and easy to lose. But we've been able to find our pioneers who see the value early on in misrepresentations, in paying out more accurately. And these are usually at a quite senior level that they do see impact to the business of adopting technology and trying new things, especially in the industry that's somewhat notorious for slower adoption.
Yeah, and I guess for many reasons, by nature of the industry itself, by scale, by complexity, it can be tough to implement a new data source, a new solution, a new technology, anything new. And so, yeah, trust is imperative in that process, but that's a little bit cyclic, isn't it? How can you trust the data before you've used it? How can you access the data before you've implemented it? So that word of mouth piece, I think, adds a lot in. And it seems like there's also a lot of benefit that can be added to the claims process through something like social intelligence that isn't obvious. It maybe needs to be experienced to kind of truly illustrate the benefit it can add.
Absolutely. There's nothing quite as eye-opening as to see a worker on a workers' compensation claim traveling to Argentina for a hike in Patagonia when they claim their back hurts, or maybe their spouse, you know, sharing the photos of them on a cottage house with the kids playing soccer when they cannot, when they say that they're on a disability policy, not able to do even basic tasks, right? Being able to do it in a way that is actionable and at the fingertips for the adjusters, that is an aha moment that happens all too often, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then when you scale that by the number of claims that are handled by each carrier, by each kind of adjuster, claims team, there's a potential for a really kind of negative impact there, but equally that represents an opportunity to improve processes and outcomes, and commercials. So, final question, and a bit of an open one. If you could change one thing about the insurance industry, what would it be and why?
I would say that we live in a world that is changing ever so rapidly. And if I were to change one thing with an insurance industry is to decalcify the mindset of leaders to try to experiment new things and adopt not just technology but new processes, practices, and solutions. So being able to take a little bit more risk and take advantage of the new solutions, technologies, capabilities that we see out there. That's what I would leave it with.
hmm Yeah, I totally agree. I think, I guess to take a positive view on that, I think with the generational shift that we've previously discussed, plus the potential benefits of decalcifying the approach and becoming a bit more fluid when it comes to adopting technology, it feels like we are in a real position for that to start coming into effect.
Absolutely. And I will say that there are insurance carriers and there are leaders who are forging ahead and really setting the standards, which is so exciting. And I'm grateful to see executives and VPs demonstrating early on the adoption of agentic AI, adoption of external data sources, adoption of new partners to to improve operational capabilities internally. So there are leaders already in the space. I would just like to have that expand with more carriers and making it more acceptable to do so rather than just with pioneers and early adopters.
Yeah, totally. And those early adopters, they're going to really solidify their place in markets. I think it's technology is going to enable them to compete in a way that perhaps more tentative adopters can't. So I think we'll see that happen, and then we'll see those more tentative to adopt quickly realize how important it is to adopt. And but yeah, real opportunity to cement your place in the market simply by adopting technology. Evgeny, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Likewise, thank you for your time, and I'm very much excited with our partnership together.